On the evening she thought her marriage was safe, Adana uncovered a betrayal so deep it shook her spirit. For 17 years, she had stood beside Kelvin, believing his promises and supporting his dreams. Together they built a home, earned respect in the community, and carried each other through storms. But that night Kelvin's mask slipped. Smiling proudly, he boasted about a luxury trip to Crystal Bay worth more than $22,000, a vacation booked without her knowledge. He laughed as he described the presidential suite and private beach, not realizing the money had been stolen from the very woman who had sacrificed everything to make him a man. His voice sparkled with excitement as he spoke about candlelit dinners, dolphin sightings, and helicopter rides above the coral reefs. Where are you watching from today? Kindly hit like, comment, and subscribe to this channel for more. To any outsider, Kelvin sounded like a successful provider giving his wife the world. But Adana sat quietly, her hands folded in her lap, listening carefully. She noticed the small hesitations, the nervous laugh, the way he avoided her eyes. She had managed their finances for years, and she knew instantly this surprise gift was not born from hard work or savings. It was bought with deceit. Adana's mind drifted back to their early years together, when love was pure and trust was easy. At 23, she had married Kelvin despite her family's warnings that he was too careless with money. At 28, she stood proudly beside him as he opened a shop with support from Sunwave Holdings, a venture she partly funded from her own salary at Unity Hospital. At 30, she paid off his debts quietly so he would not lose face before his friends. But now, after all those sacrifices, Kelvin had turned the bond of marriage into a stage for betrayal. Adana could feel her heart hardening. She thought about her younger brother, Jonas, who often warned her. Adana, a man who wastes small money will one day waste big money. Jonas was careful with every dollar, saving from his modest carpentry work at Unity Market, never living beyond his means. He rode an old second-hand car, wore simple clothes, yet carried himself with honor. Adana, however, had married for love, blind to the signs of Kelvin's careless spending. And now here she was, staring at proof that Jonas's words had come true. Kelvin was not just careless. He was cunning, and he had crossed the line into theft. Later that evening, when Kelvin fell asleep, Adana sat by the dining table with her laptop open. She logged into their Citi bank account, her heart pounding. The numbers leapt at her like fire. Over $22,000 drained within days. Flights, resort bookings, luxury cars, and fine dining, all on the credit card she had trusted him with. Her eyes filled with tears, not from the money itself, but from the broken trust. For 17 years, she had believed Kelvin's promises. But now she realized she was not just living with a reckless husband. She was married to a betrayer bold enough to steal from his own wife. The following morning, Adana rose early, her eyes heavy from sleeplessness. Kelvin whistled happily as he packed his suitcase, humming about beaches and adventures. She pretended to smile while her heart burned with pain. Once he left the room, she returned to her laptop, determination replacing her tears. One by one, she began making calls. The Oceanfront Grand Resort answered first. "Good morning, I need to cancel a reservation under Kelvin Okoro," she said calmly. They asked for the confirmation code, which she read from the bank statement. Within minutes, the presidential suite was gone. The email confirmation arrived swiftly. Reservation cancelled. She moved on to the car rental. Enterprise Auto. "I'd like to cancel a booking for a luxury convertible under Kelvin Okoro." The agent apologized about the cancellation fee, but Adana didn't flinch. "Yes, proceed," she replied firmly. Another email landed. Reservation cancelled. Then she dialed Blue Water Helicopter Tours. A cheerful voice explained they could only refund 40% because the cancellation came within 24 hours of the flight. "That's fine," Adana said without hesitation. To her, the money no longer mattered. What mattered was stripping Kelvin of every luxury he thought he had secured. The empire of deceit he built was collapsing. By afternoon, she had spoken to Paradise Dining, deep-sea charters, and the private cabana service. Each conversation followed the same script. Calm, professional, determined. Every booking was cancelled, every indulgence erased. As she pressed "Remove Authorized User" on the Citibank account, a strange peace came over her. The same man who had once promised to protect her had betrayed her in the deepest way. But now she was taking back control. By the time Kelvin boarded his flight, unaware of what awaited, the paradise he envisioned was already gone. Adana leaned back, closed her laptop and whispered, "Let him land in emptiness." That night, she finally slept, the first real rest she had felt in weeks. For years, her marriage had been filled with subtle disappointments, hidden debts, and unspoken lies. But this time, Kelvin's actions had crossed a boundary she could never ignore. As she drifted into sleep, her phone buzzed. She ignored it. At dawn, she woke to find 14 missed calls, all from Kelvin. She poured her tea slowly, savoring the quiet morning. By 7:30, her phone rang again. She answered with calm grace. "Good morning," she said gently, as though nothing was wrong. "Adana," his voice cracked. "Something terrible has happened." He explained frantically how the hotel claimed the reservation was cancelled, the rental car was unavailable, and every plan had somehow vanished. He blamed the system, the bank, even invisible enemies. Adana listened in silence, sipping her tea. When he finally stopped, she said softly, "That is strange, Kelvin. Maybe it was just a glitch." But her calmness unsettled him. He asked directly, Did you cancel everything?" She let the question linger, her silence as sharp as a knife. Then she replied, "Actions always have consequences, Kelvin. You thought betrayal was a game. Now you will learn the cost." Kelvin grew restless at the airport, pacing as he spoke into the phone. "Adana, they are saying my card is not working, the hotel is full, and the car company has nothing for me. Do something." His voice carried the entitlement of a man who had always been rescued. But this time, Adana's silence was heavier than any lecture. "Kelvin," she finally said, "for 17 years I stood beside you. I cleaned your mistakes, I paid your debts, and I shielded your pride. But you never learned. You thought my sacrifice meant my weakness. You thought betrayal could be hidden. Now you face the life you built alone." At first, Kelvin laughed nervously, believing it was a trick. "You're joking, right? You wouldn't let me suffer here." But Adana's calm tone pierced deeper than anger ever could. "I am not joking. Every cent you spent was mine. Every lie you told was to me. I am finished covering for you." The line went quiet. He had no defense, no excuse that could undo the truth. In that silence, Adana felt her own chains breaking. For years, she had feared being without him. But as his frantic voice turned into begging, she realized she was stronger than she had ever believed. Kelvin's calls grew more desperate. "Adana, please, I have nowhere to stay. The little money I carried is not enough for even 2 nights. Do you want me to sleep on the streets?" But Adana remembered every time she had pleaded with him to act responsibly. She remembered Jonas warning her, "This man will drain you." She remembered selling her jewelry to settle his debts. She remembered the sleepless nights balancing hospital shifts while he slept. Her voice remained steady. "You chose deceit. You chose pride. And now you must choose humility. Sleep where you can, Kelvin. Let hardship teach you what love could not." That evening, Adana sat quietly with Jonas, sharing the truth. Her brother listened without interruption, his eyes heavy with sadness but not surprise. "Sister, I warned you," Jonas said gently. "But I also know why you stayed. You believed he would change." Adana nodded, tears pooling in her eyes. "I thought love could cover every flaw. But love without respect becomes slavery." Jonas placed his hand on hers. "You are not weak, Adana. What you did was justice, not revenge. A man who steals from his wife has broken the covenant of marriage. You cannot build a future on such betrayal." Meanwhile, Kelvin sat in a rundown roadside lodge, staring at peeling walls and a bed that smelled of mildew. He scrolled angrily through his phone, typing messages filled with blame. "You destroyed my trip. You embarrassed me," he wrote. Yet even in his anger, a part of him feared the truth. His lies had finally caught up with him. When Adana ignored the texts, he grew louder online, posting dramatic messages about betrayal. But strangers did not know his theft. His words gathered sympathy from a few, but those who truly knew him, old friends and family, remained silent. They had seen this pattern before. For 3 days, Adana held her silence. She went about her life, attending work at Unity Hospital, cooking her meals and tending her small garden. Her neighbors noticed a new calm in her steps. "You look lighter," one said kindly. And indeed she was. For the first time in years, her mind was not consumed by Kelvin's debts or excuses. Instead she felt peace. At night, she opened her laptop and gathered documents, bank statements, receipts, evidence of years of sacrifice. She knew she needed to protect herself fully now, not just emotionally but legally. Jonas promised to connect her with a trusted lawyer. On the 4th day, Kelvin returned, standing at her door with a scowl. His suitcase dragged behind him, dusty from bus travel. "Adana, we need to talk," he demanded, forcing his way inside. She stood firm, her arms crossed. "No, Kelvin. You need to listen." He slammed the suitcase down. "I am your husband. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. You ruined everything." Adana's eyes did not waver. "You embarrassed yourself. You ruined your own name. I simply refuse to keep hiding the truth." His anger clashed with her calm, but for the first time, Kelvin felt powerless under her gaze. "You cannot do this to me," Kelvin shouted, his fists trembling. "All the money you have, all the success you claim, it is ours. What's yours is mine." Adana's voice turned sharp. "What's mine is earned. What's yours is taken. There is a difference, Kelvin." His chest heaved as he searched for words, but none came. In that silence, Adana stepped closer. "Marriage is built on trust. You broke it. Love is built on respect. You lost it. And money does not make you a man, Kelvin. Character does." Her words struck harder than any slap. Kelvin staggered back, realizing she was no longer afraid. That night, Jonas visited, finding Kelvin pacing in the living room like a trapped animal. "Brother," Jonas said firmly, "you owe my sister an apology." Kelvin scoffed. "Apology? She humiliated me." Jonas shook his head. "No, you humiliated yourself. A man who steals from his wife and then lies to her is not a husband. He is a thief. You had everything, her trust, her loyalty, her sacrifice, and you traded it for empty luxuries." Kelvin turned away, ashamed but too proud to admit it. Adana remained quiet, letting her brother's words echo through the house. The truth needed no defender. When Jonas left, Adana locked the door behind him and faced Kelvin one last time. "I have spoken to a lawyer," she said calmly. "The papers are being prepared." Kelvin's eyes widened. "What papers?" She held his gaze. "Divorce. Separation of finances. Removal of your name from everything I worked for. You wanted independence, Kelvin. Now you will have it." His voice broke into pleading, his arrogance finally crumbling. "Adana, please. Don't do this. I can change." But Adana's heart was firm. Change is proven, not promised. And your time has run out. For the first time, Kelvin understood. He had truly lost her. Kelvin could not sleep that night. He paced the small living room while Adana sat silently, her mind clear. Every time he tried to speak, her silence crushed him more than her words. At dawn, she rose, dressed neatly, and left for Unity Hospital without a single glance at him. Kelvin sat alone, surrounded by the quiet house he once called his kingdom. For the first time, he noticed how much of it came from Adana's labor. The furniture, the car outside, the paid mortgage. None of it was his. The reality pressed down on him. He had built nothing, yet he had destroyed everything. Later that afternoon, Adana met with a lawyer named Mrs. Okeke at City Law Chambers. She spread the bank statements across the polished desk, showing every charge Kelvin had made without her consent. Mrs. Okeke nodded firmly. This is not only betrayal, Adana. It is theft. You have every right to protect your future. Adana's hands trembled slightly, but her voice remained steady. I want the marriage dissolved. I want his access to my finances completely removed. And I want everything documented so he cannot twist the truth. The lawyer leaned forward. Then prepare yourself. Men like Kelvin do not accept consequences quietly. Meanwhile, Kelvin wandered the neighborhood, searching for sympathy. He told neighbors that Adana was cruel, that she had turned cold, that she was breaking the family apart. But the neighbors were not fools. They had seen Adana's sacrifices over the years, how she worked long shifts, carried bills, and quietly protected her husband's pride. Kelvin, one elder told him gently, a man who eats from his wife's sweat should not call her cruel when she says enough. The words stung him deeply. For the first time, he realized the community no longer saw him as the victim. They saw him as the betrayer. Jonas visited again, bringing calm strength into the tense atmosphere. Sister, are you ready for the storm? He asked quietly. Adana nodded. I have endured storms before. This one will not break me. Jonas turned to Kelvin, who sat sulking on the couch. Brother-in-law, listen to me. If you still love my sister, prove it. Accept your mistakes, walk humbly and start again. Stop trying to twist the story. Kelvin clenched his jaw, refusing to meet Jonas's eyes. I am still the head of this home, he muttered. Jonas sighed. Headship without integrity is tyranny. And no woman owes loyalty to tyranny. The days passed quickly, and soon the first court documents arrived. Kelvin's pride shattered as he read the words. Petition for divorce, financial separation, and legal protection for Adana's assets. He slammed the papers on the table. You are destroying me, Adana, he shouted. But she remained calm. No, Kelvin. You destroyed yourself when you stole from me. His temper flared, but something inside him also cracked. He saw the woman before him, not the quiet wife he once manipulated, but a warrior rising in her dignity. In her eyes, he no longer saw fear. He saw resolve, and it terrified him. Adana's story began to spread quietly among friends and relatives. Some whispered in shock, others in admiration. Many women saw her courage as a beacon, proof that silence was not the only answer to betrayal. One evening a neighbor told her, Adana, you have given many women strength. Too long we have suffered in silence, thinking endurance is our only choice. Adana smiled weakly. I did not set out to inspire anyone. I only wanted to reclaim my peace. But in her heart, she knew the truth. Sometimes personal battles became communal lessons. Her pain was no longer hers alone. It was teaching others. Kelvin, on the other hand, found himself isolated. Old friends avoided his calls, unwilling to be drawn into his drama. At Sunwave Holdings, whispers followed him down the corridor. Is that not the man who stole from his wife? Some murmured. His pride burned, but he could not silence the rumors. Even Emmanuel, his old drinking companion, shook his head. Kelvin, you crossed a line no man should. You betrayed the hand that fed you. What did you expect? Kelvin grew bitter, but deep down, he knew Emmanuel was right. The respect he once demanded could no longer be forced. It had vanished forever. One night, Kelvin tried a different approach. He knelt before Adana, tears streaming down his face. Please forgive me. I will change. I will work. I will become the man you deserve. His voice broke like a child's. For a moment, Adana's heart softened, remembering the man she once loved. But she steadied herself. Kelvin, forgiveness is not the same as restoration. You want me to forget years of lies with one night of tears. But true change takes time, and I no longer have years to waste. Kelvin sobbed, but her words stood like a wall he could not climb. The hearing day arrived, and Adana stood before the magistrate with her lawyer by her side. Kelvin came too, his eyes hollow, his pride deflated. The judge listened carefully as evidence was presented: bank statements, receipts, records of years of financial support. Kelvin tried to defend himself, claiming it was family money, but the judge shook his head. A husband's duty is to protect, not plunder. Marriage is not a license for theft. The ruling favored Adana, granting her full control over her finances and moving the divorce process forward. Justice had spoken, and for the first time, Kelvin felt utterly defeated. That evening, Adana returned home, weary but at peace. She sat in her quiet living room, sipping tea, as Jonas placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Sister, it is finished," he said gently. She nodded, tears flowing freely, but this time they were tears of release. Outside, the night breeze carried whispers of her courage through the neighborhood. Kelvin sat alone in his lodge room, staring into emptiness. He had lost his wife, his respect, and the life built on her sacrifices. Adana whispered to herself, "The wound is deep, but I will heal. Betrayal may break trust, but it cannot break my spirit." In the weeks that followed, Adana began to rebuild her life slowly. She focused on her work at Unity Hospital, poured her energy into community service, and even returned to hobbies she had abandoned years ago. Neighbors often stopped her on the street to whisper encouragement. "You gave us courage," one woman said. Adana would smile, though inside she still carried scars. Healing was not instant, but it was steady. At night, she journaled her thoughts, writing letters she never sent. In those quiet words she found freedom. For the first time in 17 years, her laughter returned, soft but genuine, like sunlight breaking after rain. Kelvin, meanwhile, sank deeper into shadows. Without Adana's steady hand, his debts mounted quickly. Old creditors resurfaced, demanding payment he could not afford. His friends drifted further away, unwilling to tie themselves to his shame. Even his relatives, once quick to defend him, grew silent. "You chose pride over peace," his uncle told him bluntly. "Now you must carry the burden." Kelvin spent nights alone in a cramped room at the lodge, haunted by memories of what he had lost. The man who once bragged about presidential suites now counted coins for food. He realized too late that betrayal was far costlier than loyalty. One Sunday morning, Adana attended a community gathering at Sunwave Hall. The elders asked her to share her story, not to shame Kelvin but to guide others. She spoke gently, her voice steady, her eyes calm. "Marriage is built on trust. When trust is broken, love cannot breathe. We must learn that sacrifice is not slavery, and silence is not strength. Sometimes walking away is the only path to peace." The hall grew quiet. Many women wept. Many men bowed their heads in shame. Her words were not bitter, they were wise. In that moment, Adana's pain was transformed into a lesson for generations. Kelvin stood outside that same hall, listening through the open windows. He could not bring himself to enter, but every word pierced him. He realized that Adana had risen above bitterness while he remained trapped in pride. For the first time, he admitted the truth to himself. She had been the strength in their home, and he had been the weakness. As the crowd applauded her, Kelvin's tears flowed quietly. He turned away, his shoulders heavy, carrying the weight of regret. He finally understood that trust, once broken, was harder to rebuild than any business, and that some mistakes were beyond repair. That evening, Adana sat in her garden, watching the sunset paint the sky with gold. Jonas joined her, setting down a basket of fresh fruits. "Sister," he said softly, "your journey was not easy, but you have come through stronger." Adana smiled faintly. "I thought losing him would break me, but in truth it freed me." The breeze carried her words across the quiet neighborhood, reminding everyone that dignity was worth more than wealth. Kelvin, miles away in his dim room, whispered her name but found no answer. The story of Adana ended not in sorrow, but in strength. Betrayal had failed, her spirit endured.